It's been 3 years since Claire died. 3 long, empty years. I've moved twice, changed jobs, cut my hair, tried to reinvent myself into someone who doesn't wake up screaming at 3 a.m. anymore. But the truth is, when someone like Claire leaves your life, they don't really leave. They linger. In the corners of your mind, in the photos you didn't delete, in the voicemail you still can't bring yourself to erase. Ours was a messy marriage. Too many fights. Too many silences. We used to say we loved each other, but somewhere along the line, "I love you" started sounding like an apology. We divorced quietly, the way people do when they've already said everything there is to say. And then, less than 6 months later, she was gone. A car crash. A drunk driver ran a red light. They told me she died instantly. For a long time, I blamed myself. If I had called her that night, just one call, maybe she wouldn't have been driving alone. Maybe she'd still be alive. I thought I was getting better. I even started dating again. Her name was Lily, a kind, soft-voiced woman who somehow made me feel like I wasn't cursed. Then, one night, everything fell apart again. It was 2:13 a.m. when my phone buzzed. I was half asleep. The screen glowed with an incoming call from Claire. I sat up fast. My pulse thundered. That contact hadn't shown up on my screen in years. Her number was still saved in my phone, but I hadn't dialed it since the funeral. I stared at it, frozen. Part of me thought it was a cruel prank. Another part, the part that still missed her laugh, wanted to answer. The call ended before I could touch the screen. My room went still. For a moment I thought I could smell her perfume, sandalwood and rain. I told myself it was a glitch. Phones do strange things sometimes. But the next night, it happened again. 2:13 a.m. Same number. Same silence when I picked up. Just static. And beneath the static, breathing. Slow, deliberate breathing. I said her name. "Claire?" No response. Just breathing. Then a faint whisper, like someone speaking through water. "Why did you leave?" I dropped the phone. The call disconnected. That night I didn't sleep. I checked the call log in the morning. No record of the call. Nothing. Lily noticed I was distracted. I told her I'd been dreaming about my ex again. She didn't push. She just said, "Maybe it's your mind trying to let go." I nodded, but inside I knew it wasn't that simple. The following week, the calls got worse. Every night. Same time, same number. Sometimes I'd hear static, sometimes faint crying. Once I swear I heard her voice say my name, clear as day. I finally decided to call the number myself. It rang once, then cut off. I tried again. Same thing. On the third try, it connected. But what I heard made my blood run cold. It was a recording. Our wedding vows. My own voice, promising to love her in this life and the next. I dropped the phone like it burned me. The next day, I went to the phone company, trying to find an explanation. They checked everything, call records, SIM data, logs. They said the number was inactive, disconnected years ago. I moved out of my apartment that week. I couldn't stand being in that room anymore. But no matter where I went, the calls followed. New number, new phone. Even a new carrier. Didn't matter. At 2:13 a.m., she'd find me. Lily tried to be understanding, but she started getting scared. Once when I was out, she swore the phone rang by itself. When she picked up, a woman's voice whispered, "He's mine." That was the night Lily left. She said she couldn't sleep in a house where the dead still called. I didn't blame her. After that, I started noticing other things. My phone battery would drain suddenly around 2 a.m. My screen would flicker, and for a split second, I'd see Claire's face in the reflection. Not as she was when she lived, but pale, bruised, broken. One night, desperate, I called her number again. "What do you want from me?" I screamed into the receiver. The answer came softly. "You promised." And then the call ended. A few days later, I received a package. No return address. Inside was a burnt cell phone, her old phone. The screen was cracked, but when I plugged it in, it came to life. There was one message waiting in the voicemail box, time-stamped the night she died. Her voice was weak, trembling. "I forgive you. Don't follow me." Then a crash, a scream. Silence. I threw the phone across the room, heart pounding. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning I woke to find my phone on my pillow. I hadn't put it there. The screen glowed with a message. No number. Just one sentence. "You said you wouldn't leave me." Every night since then the calls haven't stopped. They've changed. Sometimes she laughs, sometimes she cries, sometimes she begs. But lately, she just whispers one thing over and over. "It's time." And tonight, as I write this, it's 2:12 a.m. I can already feel it coming. My phone's starting to vibrate. The screen is lighting up. It says, "Claire, incoming call." And this time, I think I'm going to answer. I never wanted to go back to Emily's apartment. After our divorce, I swore I'd never step foot in that building again. Too many memories lingered there. Some tender, some terrifying. But when her sister called me out of nowhere, crying hysterically, saying Emily had gone missing, something inside me twisted. I told myself I was only going to help find clues. Nothing more. But deep down, a darker curiosity pulled me there. Something in me needed to see what she left behind. It was a stormy evening when I arrived at her old apartment. The hallway smelled faintly of bleach and something metallic. The police had already searched the place but found nothing unusual. The door was unlocked. As I stepped inside, I felt a sudden drop in temperature. The air was thick, as if the room itself was holding its breath. Emily's things were all still there, her shoes by the door, her plants on the windowsill, and the familiar lavender candle she used to light every night before bed. Everything looked frozen in time. The first thing that caught my eye was the large antique mirror in the living room. I remembered the day she brought it home from an old estate sale. She said the mirror spoke to her, that it felt like it had a soul. I laughed it off back then. But now, standing before it, I felt something else. The frame was carved with intricate figures, faces twisted in agony, hands reaching out as if trapped beneath the glass. When I looked at my reflection, the room behind me seemed wrong. The shadows were moving slightly, like breathing, and in the reflection I thought I saw a faint figure standing behind me, a woman's silhouette. I turned sharply, but no one was there, just the dim light from the hallway flickering on and off. I should have left right then, but I couldn't. I kept telling myself it was my imagination. Grief, guilt, anything but what my instincts were screaming. I sat down on her couch, scanning the room for clues. That's when I noticed her diary lying open on the coffee table. The last entry was dated a week before she disappeared. The mirror isn't just glass, it watches me, sometimes it answers. My throat tightened. As I turned the page, a cold gust of air brushed against my neck. The mirror's surface shimmered as if water rippled through it. My reflection blinked a split second later than I did. I froze. I lifted my hand, so did it, but not perfectly in sync. There was a delay, a strange lag, like it was thinking before copying me. Then I heard it. A faint whisper. My name. It was Emily's voice. Soft, pleading, almost affectionate. "Ryan." I stumbled back, knocking over the coffee table. The whisper came again, louder. "Ryan, don't leave me again." The surface of the mirror began to darken, the glass fogging up from the inside. Slowly, an outline appeared, a woman's face pressing against the glass. Her eyes were wide, full of sorrow and rage. It was Emily. "Emily," I gasped, my voice cracked. "What the hell is happening?" She didn't answer. Her hand reached out from within the glass, pressing against it. I could see frost spreading outward from her touch. The air in the room grew so cold I could see my breath. Then she spoke again, her voice trembling with emotion. "You promised. Forever." I shook my head, tears burning my eyes. "You're gone, Emily. You're dead. You can't be here." Her expression twisted. "You made me this way." Suddenly the mirror began to vibrate violently. Cracks spread across the glass like lightning veins. I ran for the door, but it slammed shut on its own. The lights flickered out, plunging the apartment into darkness. Only the mirror glowed faintly, casting a ghostly blue light. From the cracks, a black liquid began to drip, thick like ink. The smell was unbearable, like rotting metal. I stumbled backward as the mirror bulged outward, and then, with a sickening sound, Emily stepped out. Her skin was pale and cracked like porcelain, her eyes sunken but alive with fury. She moved toward me in slow, deliberate steps. "You never saw me," she whispered. "You never listened when I said it was watching us." "I don't understand." I stammered, my back hitting the wall. She tilted her head. "It wanted you, Ryan. I tried to stop it. I gave it me instead." And then, before I could respond, she lunged forward. I screamed, raising my arms to shield my face, but there was no impact, only a sudden silence. When I opened my eyes, the room was empty. The mirror stood perfectly intact again, gleaming as if nothing had happened. The next morning, the police called me. They had found Emily's body. She was discovered in the basement of the apartment building, dead for weeks. Her face, they said, looked like it had been pressed hard against glass. I moved out of town that day, but sometimes, in the reflection of windows or my phone screen, I still catch a glimpse of her standing behind me, smiling, waiting. Last night, I woke up to find a mirror leaning against my bedroom wall. I never brought one in. Written across it, in fogged letters, were the words, "Your turn." When you go through a divorce, you expect anger, sadness, maybe even relief, but you never expect horror. My name's Matthew Cole, and I thought my marriage to Vanessa was just over. It had been 6 years of love that turned into tension, silence, and cold stares. We didn't have kids, only a mortgage and the kind of emotional scars people hide behind polite smiles. The last day I saw her alive, she was calm, too calm. She smiled as she handed me the divorce papers, her eyes glinting with something I couldn't read. She said softly, "I'll always make sure you get what's coming to you, Matt." I thought it was just bitterness. I didn't realize she meant it literally. A month after the divorce was finalized, Vanessa died in a car accident on the outskirts of town. A late-night drive on a wet road, a tree, and silence. I felt guilty for how relieved I was. It's not that I wished her harm, I just wanted peace. But that peace lasted exactly 1 week. It started small. The day after her funeral, I received a certified letter from her lawyer. Inside was a handwritten note, in Vanessa's perfect looping script. "I left you something that belonged to both of us, don't ignore it." There was a small key taped to the page, labeled Storage Unit 17B. At first, I didn't want to go. But curiosity, it's a dangerous thing. The following weekend, I drove to the storage facility. The air smelled of rain and rust. Inside the unit was only one thing, a wooden chest about 4 feet wide, old and covered with strange burn marks. There was a tag tied to it that read, "For Matthew, our memories." I unlocked it with shaking hands. Inside were dozens of items from our marriage, photo albums, letters, her favorite scarf, my old wristwatch, and at the very bottom, a small glass jar. It was filled with a dark, red-brown liquid. A label was glued to it. "What's left of us." I frowned, assuming it was some morbid metaphor. But when I picked up the jar, I could swear the liquid moved slightly, like something inside was alive. I set it down, unnerved, and decided I'd had enough. But as I closed the lid of the chest, I heard a whisper. It was faint, but unmistakable. My name. Matt. I froze. The sound was coming from inside the chest. I leaned closer. "Vanessa?" I whispered, my voice trembling. The whisper came again, but this time it sounded like it was right beside my ear. "Don't forget me." I stumbled back so fast I hit the metal wall behind me. My heart was pounding, my palms slick with sweat. I slammed the chest shut, locked the unit, and left. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face the night she gave me those papers, calm, smiling, knowing. The next few days were worse. My house began to smell faintly of her perfume, jasmine and rosewater. The scent lingered in every room, especially near my bed. I started hearing faint tapping sounds at night like fingernails on glass. Then, one morning, I found a photo on my nightstand. It was our wedding picture, but her face was scratched out. I hadn't seen that photo since before the divorce. I called the lawyer again, demanding to know if anyone else had access to that storage unit. He said it was impossible. It had been sealed the day I left. No one had opened it since. That night I dreamed I was lying in bed, and Vanessa was standing in the corner, staring at me. Her skin was pale, her lips cracked, and her eyes were hollow. She whispered, "You signed away my heart." Then she reached into her chest and pulled out a jar, the same jar from the storage unit, filled with that dark liquid. I woke up screaming. My phone said 3:17 a.m. I went to the bathroom to wash my face, but when I looked in the mirror, my reflection didn't move right away. It was delayed, like it was thinking. Then, slowly, my reflection smiled, a cold, lifeless grin, and blood began dripping from its mouth. I staggered back, terrified. But when I looked again, it was gone. The next morning, the jar was sitting on my kitchen counter, the same one, the same dark liquid swirling inside. I hadn't brought it home. I hadn't touched it since that day. That was when I called the police. They came, checked the house, and found nothing unusual. They assumed it was stress. But one of the officers, a young guy named Howard, picked up the jar and frowned. "This is weird," he said. "It's warm." 2 days later, that same officer was found dead in his car, his veins blackened like they'd been burned from the inside. After his death, the jar vanished again. I moved out of my house, stayed in a hotel, changed my number, but she found me anyway. Every night at exactly 3:17, I'd wake up to the sound of a woman breathing beside my ear. Sometimes she whispered, "You'll get what's yours." Other times, it was just a soft laugh, the same one she used to give when she knew she was right. I started researching the chest, desperate for answers. I found the original owner, an antique dealer who'd sold it to Vanessa years ago. When I told him what had happened, he went pale. He said, "That chest came from a burned-down house in Louisiana. It used to belong to a couple who made blood pacts, to bind their souls forever. The wife killed herself after the husband filed for divorce. The chest was found next to her body. Her blood was in a jar labeled 'What's Left of Us.' I asked him if it could be destroyed. He just shook his head. 'You can't destroy devotion, son. It only changes form.' That was 2 months ago. Since then, I've moved 4 times. The jar keeps showing up, always in a new place, always filled to the brim. Last night, I found it beside my bed again. Except this time, it wasn't just liquid. There was something floating inside. A heart. As I stared at it in horror, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. When I opened it, my blood ran cold. It was a voice recording. Her voice. Calm. Loving. "Hi, Matt. Just wanted to say, the settlement's complete. You got everything I promised you." And then a laugh. Soft. Familiar. I threw the phone against the wall. The jar was pulsing now, the glass almost breathing. I think it's calling me back, to the storage unit, to her. But I'm afraid that if I go there again, I won't come back. I hear her voice every night now. And the worst part? Sometimes, I talk back. I never believed in hauntings until I spent a winter in the cabin my ex-wife picked out for our honeymoon. We never actually used it back then. She'd found it through an old listing, deep in the woods of northern Maine, and said she wanted a place that felt like forever. I remember laughing when she said that. We divorced 2 years later. Forever had lasted barely 700 days. 3 years after our separation, I got a call from her brother. His voice was trembling. "Lydia's gone," he said. "They found her car by the lake. She left a note that said she was going back to the cabin." The words hit me like a blade. I hadn't heard that name in years. The cabin. That place had been nothing more than a fantasy, a forgotten bookmark in our marriage. But somehow she'd remembered. I didn't even know if the cabin still existed. A week later, I drove out there. I told myself it was for closure, but I think a part of me was chasing guilt. The road was nearly invisible under the snow, and the deeper I went, the more my GPS failed. Finally, I saw it, an old wooden cabin half buried under years of ice and neglect. The roof sagged, the windows were frosted over, but it was there, waiting. When I stepped inside, the air was bitter cold, and the floorboards moaned under my boots. Dust covered everything except for one thing, the fireplace mantel. On it sat a framed photo of me and Lydia from our wedding day. I froze. That photo had been destroyed years ago. I burned it myself after the divorce. The smell of pine and perfume filled the room. Her perfume. I whispered her name, and the sound echoed faintly as though the walls themselves repeated it back to me. I felt something brush against my arm, soft, like hair. But when I turned, there was no one there. I decided to stay the night. I lit the fireplace, unpacked my sleeping bag, and tried to calm my nerves. The cabin creaked with every gust of wind. But as midnight approached, something strange began to happen. The fire dimmed, even though I'd just fed it more logs. The temperature dropped sharply, and then faintly I heard it, a woman humming. It was the lullaby Lydia used to hum when she couldn't sleep. I'd forgotten how gentle it sounded, how human. But this time, it didn't feel comforting. It came from the next room, the bedroom. My stomach twisted. I got up slowly and walked toward the sound, my flashlight shaking in my hand. The door was slightly open. Through the gap, I saw movement, something shifting beneath the covers of the bed. I swallowed hard and pushed the door open. The bed was neatly made, but on the pillow, there was a single blonde hair, her hair. Then I heard it again. "You came back," a voice whispered behind me. I spun around, shining my light wildly, but there was no one. Just the empty cabin, breathing with the wind. I forced a laugh, trying to convince myself it was the wind, my imagination, or exhaustion. But when I turned back toward the bed, my laughter died in my throat. Someone had written on the fogged window in long, shaky letters, "Stay with me this time." I stumbled backward, heart hammering. I tried to leave, but the door wouldn't open. The handle twisted under my grip like something was holding it shut. I kicked it, slammed it, screamed, but it was no use. The walls groaned, and the lights flickered. Then, slowly, I heard footsteps upstairs. But the cabin didn't have an upstairs. The sound came again, slow, deliberate, dragging steps moving directly above me. I looked up, frozen. Dust drifted down from the ceiling. I grabbed my flashlight and backed into the corner, trying to think, to breathe. Then a voice came from the stairs, the soft, trembling voice of Lydia. "I kept it ready for us, Matt. I knew you'd come." The steps reached the bottom. My flashlight flickered, and for a brief second, I saw her, standing in the doorway, wearing her wedding dress soaked and torn, her skin pale as frost. Her eyes weren't human anymore. They were glassy, milky white, reflecting the firelight. She smiled, but her lips cracked, dark blood oozing from the corners. "You left before we could begin," she whispered. "But forever means forever." I screamed, stumbling backward as she took a step closer. Her movements were jerky, as if her bones didn't bend right anymore. The air grew thick, heavy with the scent of decay. The fire died completely. Then everything went dark. When I woke up, the fire was burning again. Morning light leaked through the frosted windows. The door was wide open. My car was parked exactly where I'd left it. It was as if nothing had happened. But when I stood up, I noticed something carved into the wood floor beside my sleeping bag. "See you soon, husband." I left that morning, driving faster than I ever have in my life. I didn't stop until I reached the next town. I tried to tell the sheriff what I saw, but he just frowned and said, "That cabin burned down 10 years ago. Lightning strike. No one's lived there since." I didn't argue. I just left. But later that night, as I checked into a motel, I found a small envelope waiting at the front desk with my name on it. Inside was a photo, the same wedding picture I'd seen on the cabin's mantel. Only this time, Lydia's face was scratched out, and behind me, in the photo, was the faint image of her standing in the doorway of that cabin. The back of the photo had a single line written in her handwriting. "Next time, you won't wake up." I still hear her humming sometimes, especially when it snows, They say divorce ends everything, that it closes the door on the past. But I learned the hard way that some doors never truly close. My ex-wife Anna didn't just leave me, she stayed. Somewhere between our separation and her death, she found a way to linger. And I was the only one who could feel it. Our marriage ended bitterly. 5 years of love twisted into resentment. We argued constantly, each fight sharper than the last. By the time the divorce was finalized, I was relieved. I thought I was free. But Anna, she didn't take freedom lightly. She left a trail, not of possessions, not of bills, but of herself. It started a month after the divorce. I was living in a small apartment downtown, trying to rebuild my life. I'd switched my number, moved my bank accounts, and deleted social media profiles to erase any trace of her influence. One night, I returned from work to find my door unlocked. My heart sank. I was meticulous about security. I checked inside. Nothing seemed missing, but on the kitchen counter sat a single rose, fresh, perfectly red. Anna's favorite. I didn't know how it got there. The next morning, I called the florist. "No one ordered a rose here," she said. "Besides, it's a holiday. Our shop was closed all night." I laughed it off, telling myself it was a coincidence. But that night, my alarm didn't go off. Instead, I woke to my bedroom door creaking open, the cold air biting my skin. There she was, or at least, what looked like her. Standing in the corner, barely visible in the shadows, hair long and flowing, her face pale as the moonlight streaming through the window. "Anna?" I whispered. No reply. Just the faintest movement of her lips and a single word. "Finally." From that moment, nothing was normal. My apartment seemed alive. Doors would slam shut on their own, lights flickered, sometimes even changing color. Red, then blue, then black. Mirrors reflected her standing behind me, even when I knew no one was there. I started seeing her everywhere, in the subway, in cafes, sometimes just across the street. She didn't approach. She didn't speak. She simply watched. I tried to leave the city. New apartment, new job, new state. But wherever I went, the signs followed. Flowers, notes, whispers in empty hallways. It was as if she had mapped my life, my routines, and was waiting for me to stumble so she could remind me of her presence. One evening, exhausted and desperate, I checked into a remote cabin in Vermont. I thought isolation would help me escape her. The first night was silent, too silent. But around 2 a.m., I woke to my bed shaking. My blankets were being pulled off, slowly, deliberately. I sat up and saw her at the foot of the bed, her eyes black, voids that swallowed the dim moonlight. "You can't hide," she said, voice hollow, echoing like it came from everywhere and nowhere. I ran, but the cabin's doors led me in circles. Windows became walls. The roads outside twisted impossibly, forcing me back inside. It was like the place had reshaped itself around her presence. Desperate, I called a medium. A woman in her 60s with sharp eyes that seemed to pierce the veil between worlds. When I explained everything, she frowned. "Anna didn't die. she said softly. She lingered in the cracks between life and death. She tied herself to you, Matthew, through anger, obsession, and love twisted so far it became eternal. If you want her gone, you must confront her. I didn't sleep that night. I waited for her. Around 2 a.m., she appeared in the doorway, pale, spectral, her lips curled into a smile that was both seductive and terrifying. I spoke, voice shaking. "Anna, leave me alone. Go." She tilted her head. "You said you'd never forget me. I can't. Not now. Not ever." I remembered the old trick from the medium. Confront her with truth. "I don't hate you," I said, "but I don't love you anymore. You have to let me live my life." Her eyes narrowed, and for the first time the anger faltered, but her form began to distort. Her face stretched, shadows clawing at her body. The room warped around us. I felt her weight press into me, suffocating, binding. Then a voice, softer this time, almost human. "I just wanted you to remember." The shadows receded. She vanished. The room went silent. I thought it was over. I left the cabin vowing never to return. Months passed. Life felt normal, but occasionally, in the quietest moments, just as I drifted to sleep, I'd feel a cold breath on my neck. A whisper, almost affectionate. "I'm still here." And I realized, some ex-wives never truly leave.